Welcome to Issues and Answers with Diane Kinderwater. Issues and Answers is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. And now, Issues and Answers with your host, Diane Kinderwater.
Hi, I'm Diane Kinderwater. Oh boy, we're doing a second part of a series with Greg Zanetti discussing what other than the Middle East, Middle East and more. So we talked about in the past the overthrow of Syria. We talked about Israel, of course, the war that started in 2023, and all the interconnections. And we all know, and the United States knows, that it's really unpredictable what's going to happen, except Greg Zanetti predicts, I think the United States government does as well, that 2025 is the year of conflict. And I'm going to get to Greg right after this, so stay with us. If you joined us, you understand much of it, but we're going to do a little bit of summary and then get into the next part of his presentation to us, the generals. We'll be back right after this with Greg Zanetti. My guest today is Greg Zanetti, who is here also discussing the first part of this two-part series regarding the Middle East. Greg Zanetti is a financial wizard here in New Mexico and across the United States. He's worked, also Brigadier General, and worked in Guantanamo Bay, and dealt with a lot of these jihadists, a lot of these terrorists, right?
Right.
And knows the Middle East, studied it, and was there, and he can't really tell us why he was there. So, Greg, give us a teeny summary of what we went through in part one of our series regarding the Middle East.
Okay, so part one is the Syrian government collapsed in December of 24. It fell without a fight. Now we have this group in there, basically what we used to call terrorists, but we helped fund them. And we kind of went over the players, or at least most of the players. And there was a common denominator across this, and this was something called the pipelines. So
all interrelated. Again, watch part one.
Right.
We should have a YouTube on it, but we went through the players: United States with Britain, Qatar,
Israel,
Team A, and then we have Russia, Iran,
and Iraq,
and
Team B.
And Syria, probably Team B.
Turkey's acting in its own interests. Israel is kind of acting in their own interests as well.
Wow.
And then so the Turkey motivation is kind of where we left off. And these pipelines. All right, so I've got to take you back now a couple of years. Europe had been receiving its natural gas from Russia in underwater pipelines that were called the Nord Stream pipelines that ran from Russia under the Baltic into Russia. More than likely, we blew those up at the beginning of the Ukrainian war. Energy prices soared in Europe, as you might guess, and we have been shipping liquefied natural gas over to Europe. There are pipeline proposals to bring natural gas from the Middle East into Europe. It is huge money, Diane, massive money. And there are two competing pipelines. One starts in Iran, and it runs up through Iran, across Iraq, through Syria, then underwater.
Oh boy.
Right, so that's the red one, into Europe. All right, competing pipeline two starts in Qatar. Oh, shocking, right? Runs up through Saudi Arabia, across Syria again, and then into Turkey. If Turkey gets pipeline B, they are the distributor of the natural gas to either Europe, or it could go the other direction into Central Asia. The money is huge. So if you wonder why Turkey helped arm, fund, and train these jihadists to overthrow the Syrian government, is they wanted a Sunni government, because Turkey's mostly Sunni, in power so that the pipeline goes their direction. Right, so now...
Oh, they wanted the Sunnis in power so it could go through Syria?
And you're right, because both pipelines must go through either. It goes through Syria one way or the other.
But they wanted one to go through Syria to Turkey.
To Turkey.
Okay.
Right. They didn't want to be bypassed. They want the dough. So Turkey basically backstabbed Russia and Iran by helping this group overthrow Russia and Iran's ally, Bashar Assad, in Syria. I mean, this is like a soap opera, except it's far more deadly. So let's go to the last one. Sorry. Syria and Lebanon have motives. They just want to survive. They're in the wrong geography, in the wrong part of the world at the wrong time, and neither one of them has much power. And so they're just trying to hang on. They're victims of some unfortunate geography, but we won't go into all that. All right, let's go to the next one. The last player. This is the Arab League. Now you're into Sunni land. And we'll get to the Shias in a minute. All right, what do these guys, 42 members of the Arab League, they're almost all Sunnis, and they want the status quo. They're all getting rich. The Saudis are doing just fine. So is most of Northern Africa. They're profiting from the current system. They don't want to see this whole thing blowing up. So,
but it has with Syria.
Absolutely. They're looking on this in terror. Oh, no. Here we go. And now we're going to get into why. Now we have to go into, and you're going to see it on the little chart here, end times escalation. So remember, you've got a kingdom in Saudi Arabia.
We learned this in the first part.
Right. And you've got a priesthood in Iran. Saudi Arabia does not want a priesthood. They want to stay the king because the king has the power. They don't want to be overthrown
by religion.
Of course. So there's always that tension between the Shias and the Sunnis, and let's go to how this happened. All right. Again, I think we talked about this.
Wait. The Shias, the Sunnis are with?
Sunnis are Arabs, generally. And think of the Shias as the ancient Persians.
Okay, gotcha.
The Persians are out of Iran.
Okay.
Okay, and we talked about this in the first one. In Ukraine, it's Christians killing Christians for power, money, control. Okay, that doesn't change. No, it's not the same in the Middle East. There's always the religious piece. Shia versus Sunni, sex versus sex. And here's the interesting thing, and why your radar should go up on what happened in December. The center of gravity of this thing's Damascus. And we're going to go through all the religions now in Damascus, and you're going to start to see the importance for your Christian audience about what's going on here and why this is a really big deal. So you ready?
So Damascus was always kind of the center, not just because it was overthrown by this dictator?
Prophetically, Damascus is very important in Christianity. Paul was struck down on the road to Damascus. It's very important. Isaiah talks about Damascus, Isaiah 17. And we'll get to this, but Isaiah sees something that clearly disturbs him. He's given a vision. He sees the total destruction of Damascus. You can tell he can hardly put it into words. What's happened here? And he tries his best to describe it, and even describes the cities around it that are destroyed. Islam also has an end-time story that focuses on Damascus. So
it all centers on Damascus. Okay.
That's where I got my attention. All right. So to set the stage, what happened? Why do you have Shias and Sunnis? Now we have to go back to the death of Muhammad.
Okay.
All right, it's probably up on the screen. All right, when Muhammad died, he left no clear succession line. Who's going to take over this young, rising religion, this movement? Well, there was an immediate fight, and it broke down over ethnic lines. Muhammad, by bloodline, DNA, was really Persian, but he had been raised in the Arab part of the Middle East. So the Shia sect said, hey, it should go by bloodline. It should go to a man named Ali, who was, I believe, Muhammad's uncle, and apparently a man of noble character, very, very upright, righteous, a good guy. There is actually a subsect within the Shia religion called the Alawites, the followers of Ali. They are very strong Shias. They were in Syria in December when the Sunnis sweep through with their sect that said they're the only ones who can hear clearly from Muhammad, and we're the warriors, the judges, and the executioners. They are hunting down the Alawites. So the Alawites are fleeing, and the Christians are fleeing Syria. Get me out of here. So even though this new terrorist group is saying, well, we're not like that anymore, that's not what's happening in real life. All right, so the Shias, bloodline. The Sunni side, the Arab side said, no, 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 it should be by consensus. The new leaders should come out of a vote, basically. Well, the Arab side held sway. Thus, you have Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem is key to this in Islamic thought, all on the western side of the Middle East. And the Shias have always felt left out. The Persians got the short end of the stick. It should have been us, not the Arab side. But this is why everyone goes to Mecca every year and they don't go to Tehran. All right, so that sets the stage of this rift that happens right away in Islam. Shia versus Sunni, Persians versus Arabs. Does that make sense? All right, let's go to the next. Now we get into why what happened in December is such a big deal, because Damascus is the center. On the screen, you're probably going to see something called the Hadith of Mustadrak al-Hakim. All right, first, what's a Hadith? A Hadith is an interpretation of the Quran. So it's very much the way what the Jewish people do. You've got the Talmud interprets the Torah. And so it's rabbis writing about what Moses really meant. All right, the same thing happens in Islam. You've got these hadiths that talk about what Muhammad really meant when he wrote the Quran. All right, so here it is. This is prophetic. It's not in the Quran, but it's what the Shias believe. Think Persians. A man will emerge from the depths of Damascus. He will be called the Sufyani. The Sufyani is an Islamic Antichrist. Fascinating. Most of those who follow him will be from the tribe of Kalb. What does that mean? Kalb, they're Saudis. They're today's Saudis. Sunnis. What they're saying is, hey, the Antichrist is those other guys over there. We're the true ones. And that tells how terrible he is. He will kill by ripping stomachs of women and even kill the children. They're painting this picture of this horrible, evil guy in Damascus that must be taken care of. He, and this now refers to the Mahdi. This is the Islamic Messiah. This is the one who comes at the end of days. We'll get into him in just a minute. But he will defeat the guy. Okay, so let's go to the next page. How does this happen? All right.
Remember, we have about 15, 20 minutes left,
okay,
so I'm not asking any questions. I'm letting you go.
Before this happens, the man of the black flag, if you see a black flag flying in Iran, your ears should perk up. He's got the man of light brown skin, the tight beard, the black turban, the flowing white robes. You get this picture of this dynamic precursor to the Mahdi. He will come, he will sweep with his armies west. He will conquer the forces of the Sufyadi, the bad guy in Damascus. He will then turn his sights on Jerusalem. He will easily conquer that's left of the Christians and the Jews in Jerusalem. He will ascend to the Temple Mount. And at that point, the Mahdi can come up out of the earth. Jesus is his lieutenant. And they will declare that Allah is the one true God and Islam the one true religion. Right? So all of this centers on Damascus. All right, let's go to the next one. Isaiah chapter 17, we talked about that. This is, in our Bible, the destruction of Damascus. This has not happened in history. And now we've got all this focus. Damascus has never been reduced the way Isaiah talks about. And I know we have to do this fast, but if you read Zephaniah chapter 2 and you get out a map and you compare the cities that Zephaniah sees and what happens in Gaza, you'll be shocked at how accurate that is to today. Except it's interesting. Israel wins, but it's the remnant of Israel that takes over the land. The remnant. Israel gets hurt in these wars. It's not like they come out of this unscathed. They keep the country, but God's promised that. But it's going to be tough going if you believe these guys. All right, now we're going to get into this. How much time do we have?
We've got about 10 minutes.
All right, this was an important part, the Dead Sea Scrolls. because this brings it also together. All right, the Essenes. Okay.
No. Go ahead.
Okay. When we found the Dead Sea Scrolls, we started to see what the Essenes believed. Remember who the Essenes were. This is first century, 2,000 years ago, a sect of Judaism. They said the Pharisees and the Sadducees have gone off the rails. You guys have fallen into line with Rome. You are not following the true religion. You are not following Torah. You are not following the right calendar. We're out of here. They went to the desert. They write the Dead Sea Scrolls. We find these in 1948, and now we start interpreting them. Here's what the Essenes believed and why it matters. It very much aligns with Christian theology. They believed humanity had a 7,000-year history. The first 2,000 years, the years of chaos, the age of chaos, what happens during those 2,000 years? Adam sins. He's evicted from the garden. You've got a very odd story. Angels come down on Mount Hermon and mate with women, and it's an odd part of the Bible, but it's right there. I think it's Genesis chapter 6. And kind of pollute the bloodline. Then you get Noah and the flood, chaos. Then out of the flood, you get the Tower of Babel. The Essenes said that was crazy town. Then you get the second 2,000 years, and each day is like 1,000 years, right? Second 1,000 years, the age of instruction. God chooses Abraham. Abraham moves into the land. You get, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Then you get Moses, and you get the Ten Commandments. You get the Torah. God's teaching his people how to live. And then, of course, you get the Judges, Kings, Chronicles, David, Solomon, all of that story. The Essenes said that would be a 2,000-year period, ending about the time, get this, that John the Baptist appears on the scene. John the Baptist arrives, and the Essenes go, that's our guy. If you read about John the Baptist, he dresses in that odd, camel stuff that itches, and he eats locusts and honey, and very Essene. When John's in prison, he says, go ask Jesus if he's the Messiah. Jesus answers back, tell John, I'm feeding the poor, I'm healing the sick, the blind see, this story. Very Essene. That began in Essene language, Dead Sea Scrolls, the Age of Grace. The Age of Grace, very Christian. At the end of 2,000 years, now we're at the end of 6 days. On the seventh day we rest, the millennial kingdom. To the Essenes, the last 50 years before that time is a time of transition. That begins in 2025.
Now.
To the Essenes. So what you've got in Israel is a sect that's saying, hey, look at 2025. You've got Christians believing the rapture's coming, waiting for Jesus, Yeshua to come back. You've got the Muslims waiting for the Mahdi. All of this is coming together right now. And it all started in December of 24 when Damascus was taken. If you do not understand this, and you're going into this militarily, economically, pipelines, all of this, you're going to make really stupid decisions because you don't understand what's motivating these different players. It's not just money, it's not just control, it's not just power in the Middle East. It's pleasing a higher authority. It's a much different motivation. This is what I want to get across to your viewers. If you can now see this framework over the last hour that we've done here, who are the players? What are their motivations in the earthly? All right, get it. It's a tangle, but I get it. What are their motivations in the vertical? Now it starts to come together. So what's going to happen here? Let's go toward the end. What comes next? This is why I call it the year of conflict.
Wait, Christian end times rapture.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Christians are what? We've got our end time story. We've got, the rapture's going to come. Jesus is coming back. We don't know the book of Revelation, but we also look at Damascus. We look at Psalm 83. We look at these things and say, oh, wait, all these are precursors. So we're on the same motivation line. All right, so and by the way, a day is like 1,000 years, right? Well, Jesus was crucified almost 2,000 years ago. On the third day, he will, return. Right on time. All right, so what comes next? Have you ever heard of the Gordian knot? All right, it's a Middle Eastern legend. Some guy in a kingdom tied an ox cart with this massive rope knot and said, anybody who can loose the knot will rule the kingdom. Well, everybody comes and tries. They can never do it. Alexander the Great shows up. Says, what's this knot story? Legend has it, he goes over the knot, takes out his sword, chops it in half with one stroke. If you really read about the knot, he probably had to hack it. But the point is, we have a Gordian knot in the Middle East right now. And this is what we've been talking about for the past hour. Shias, Sunnis, subsects, Americans, Brits, Israelis, pipelines, Turks, Libyans, Arabs. Oh my goodness. How do you unwind this? Is there a diplomatic solution to what's going on in the Middle East right now? I can't find it. Is there even a military solution? Probably, but it will be hacking. These guys are going to have to go at it and see who comes out at top, because we're not going to have an economic solution. We're not going to have a diplomatic solution. We're not going to have an appeal to God solution because nobody agrees on the same God. They're going to conflict. Internally within Syria, you've got a problem for these guys. You've got 30,000 jihadists took over that country of 22 million. Think about that. You really think they've got 30,000 competent administrators in their army? It's a bunch of elementary school educated guys who can pull a trigger. They're not going to be able to control Syria. That's going to break down. Turkey's got their issues because they've backstabbed Russia. We could go through all of it again. This is all heading into chaos. So, what should you expect? You're going to see 2025 as a year of conflict. It won't just be military. Russia will try to strike back at the United States because they lost their warm water port. Are they going to fire missiles, or might they do a cyber attack? Would they go after our financial system? Do they have gray terror, where suddenly bridges go down, or you have fires, this kind of thing?
What's gray terror?
Gray terror is not where you just have terrorists blowing up themselves at a football game, but so you have food packaging plants just burning down. How did that happen? Or railroad tracks getting destroyed. How did that happen? Wait, a bridge just fell. How did this happen? That's called gray terror. These are all things that can be done to try to disrupt the other superpower. It's already underway. You don't have to be a prophet, and I'm not a prophet, I'm Greg from Albuquerque. But I've studied this my whole life. I've studied war my whole life. You know, I'm a West Point guy. I had battalion commands, my company commands, battalion commands, regimental commands, brigade commands, finally command of a joint task force. I kind of understand the military piece. I have managed money for some of the wealthiest people in the world, and money and war go together like this. And if you can't put the two together, you don't get either side. And then you have to tie the spiritual to it, because that's the most important part of all. If you can combine those three, you can get a clearer picture of what's going on. And that's what I'm trying to convey to your viewers. This is what's happening. I tried to do it in as logical a way as possible. So as the events of 2025 play out, you can say, oh, it's not just some random thing. You can hang it on a framework. And that was my goal today.
And at the end of in December of 2024, before President Trump took office, he said that he would like to withdraw the forces in Syria, the 800, 900 forces. And he said we should have, reportedly, the United States should have nothing to do with the situation in Syria. It's not our fight. Let it play out.
Yeah, and then you have Mitch McConnell giving a speech 2 days later saying, I'm going to do everything in the world to stop the guy. This is right. Israel won't want that to happen. President Trump talked about this when he was in office in 2016, was told, you can't do that, sir. I think this time he has more determination. But
to let it go, to let it play out.
To let it go. But that
in the interest of the majority leader, he wants to do everything he can. Why? He believes it's the United States' interest to overthrow the overthrowers.
This is
to overthrow.
Yeah, everyone's got an ideology on this thing. What's America's role in the world, and how do we achieve it? And President Trump's is much different than both some Republicans and some Democrats in Washington. There's always money involved with this too. So that's a whole other show.
Okay.
And actually I've been giving talks on this to people too. What's happened since Trump won and named his cabinet? What has the establishment done already to undermine him? If you want me back to talk about that, your poor audience, if they could.
Well, no, we're all poor, and we have a whole new, 2025, it's a brand new year.
Right.
I was hoping it was going to be a year of hope, but now we're learning from Greg Zanetti and others that it's a year of conflict.
But if you're a Christian, it is hope. I mean, you know what happens in this. The darkness, the light shines. Our souls were chosen for this time. This is an amazing honor. God knew from the beginning that you would be here and you have a role. So you can either shrink up and go away. Well, all right, but I don't think he wants you to do that. Our souls were chosen to do something. I get to do this, to try to explain it to your viewers. I'm not stopping here. Let's do what he wants us to do. Let's be the mighty men of God, the mighty women of God that he wants us to be. I view it totally differently. We should be, let's go. 2025, fight. But not for a president, but for our God. That's what this is all about. So I want to pass the test. I want to acquit myself well. I think your viewers want to acquit themselves well. But to acquit yourselves well, you have to understand the landscape. You have to understand what's going on out there. Go out there with some wisdom, not emotionally, not falling apart. All right, what can I do to help?
And what can we do? Pray will help?
Absolutely.
Very good.
All right, my friend. Thank you for having me.
Greg, thank you so much. And again, thanks to KCHF TV for giving us this program and you, Greg Zanetti, at the time to educate.
Thank you.
And also entertain us. So we're going to end by smiling because there is hope. There is hope. Happy 2025 to all of us here in the United States and New Mexico and, of course, across the world. Let's pray for that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
With your host, Diane Kinderwater, is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. To comment on today's program, email us at info@kchftv.org or call us at 505-345-1991. Join us again for Issues and Answers with Diane Kinderwater.